court therefore accepts your plea of guilty and so finds you guilty.
A former Tennessee teacher will spend more than 2 decades behind bars after admitting to multiple sex crimes involving one of her students, including one shocking case where she became pregnant by one of her victims. We're going to break down the horrific details of this case now that it's finally reached its end. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Elizabeth Millner, in for Jesse Weber. This is a Law&Crime legal alert. Did you know that children are being diagnosed with serious conditions like type 2 diabetes and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease? And research is potentially leaking ultra-processed foods to these outcomes. Morgan & Morgan is stepping in to fight to hold food companies accountable. With decades of experience fighting large corporations, they're ready to stand up for families who deserve justice. If your child under 21 has been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes or fatty liver disease, visit www.forthepeople.com/food to learn more. It's a case that stunned a small town in Tennessee. Alissa McCommon, a 39-year-old former elementary school teacher from Covington, Tennessee, was sentenced to 25 years in prison without the possibility of parole. This comes after she pleaded guilty to several charges involving child sexual abuse. McCommon was convicted of multiple counts of child rape, statutory rape, and sexual exploitation of minors. So let's start at the beginning. The case against McCommon unfolded in August of last year when the mother of a 12-year-old boy came forward to report McCommon had sexually assaulted her son inside McCommon's own home. This victim, who had been one of McCommon's students when she taught at Crestview Elementary School back in 2021, reported that she had invited him over to her house for a sleepover. During that sleepover, he said she woke up in the middle of the night and sexually assaulted him. McCommon's teaching career began to unravel when that allegation was officially brought to light on August 24th of 2023. That same day, the school took immediate action against McCommon, and the Tipton County Director of Schools released a statement saying, quote, "A parent brought forth allegations of misconduct on the morning of August 24th, and the teacher was suspended without pay the same morning pending the outcome of the investigation," end quote. McCommon was suspended from her position at Covington Charter Academy School. She had previously worked as a 5th grade teacher at Crestview Elementary School before switching to teach 4th grade English/language arts at Charter Academy. McCommon was then arrested on September 8th and charged with 1 count of raping a child. But police soon discovered this wasn't an isolated incident. The investigation by the Covington Police Department revealed that McCommon had targeted multiple students, many of which she had initially befriended through playing video games online, but this digital connection turned dark pretty quickly. Covington police addressed the allegations in a statement saying, quote, "Multiple juvenile victims have come forth stating that they were befriended by their former teacher, McCommon, who began playing video games with them and then further engaged with them through mobile phone social media apps, which led to her allegedly sending inappropriate photographs and requesting sexual relations with the victims." Investigators say she groomed and manipulated the victims, engaging with them on social media platforms like Snapchat, where she sent sexually explicit images and coerced them into sexual encounters. According to police, these interactions took place outside of school, and there was no evidence linking her disturbing actions to any school campus. Now, even with this information coming out, McCommon's lawyers maintained her innocence, telling a local news outlet, WREG, "We believe that it's a borderline witch hunt on social media, and that's frustrating to us." McCommon was arrested on September 8th on charges of rape of a child. McCommon was booked into the Tipton County Jail following her arrest, and she was able to post a $25,000 bond. But her release had one specific condition. She was not to have any contact with the victim or any minors other than her own children. While McCommon was suspended, she eventually resigned from her teaching position on September 14th. But there's so much more to this story that happened after her arrest and resignation. McCommon couldn't follow the rules of her release, and after just 2 weeks of being out, she was rearrested, this time for stalking one of the children. Authorities discovered she had contacted one of the victims on September 16th using an unknown phone number, and police revealed in a statement the disturbing nature of those messages, saying, quote, "The evidence indicates McCommon texted a victim using a specific code word known to the juvenile as a code word McCommon would previously utilize to confirm that the juvenile was alone, often before sending nude photographs on Snapchat." After using the code word on September 28th of 2023, the evidence indicates McCommon sent multiple text messages to the victim indicating he would regret doing this. McCommon, using the same number, also admitted to a sexual encounter with the victim. So on September 28th, she headed right back to jail on new criminal charges of coercion of a witness, aggravated stalking and harassment, and was booked back into the Tipton County Jail, this time without bond. But if you thought the bond violation and threatening language was bad, you couldn't possibly imagine where this case is headed next. The most disturbing revelation in this case came in court when prosecutors presented a phone call that was recorded between McCommon and one of her victims, where McCommon said she was pregnant with her victim's child. Now let's take a listen to that call that was played in court.
Just forget we ever talked, okay? I'll raise this baby and I love this baby and I'll do it by myself. I'm gonna raise this baby. I can do this. I tried to tell you when it comes out looking like you. We don't have to talk anymore. Just please God tell me you're not gonna say anything. I'll never speak to you again.
So this bombshell evidence indicated pretty clearly that McCommon had not only had sexually assaulted the victim, but also tried to manipulate him into silence after the abuse had occurred. But her defense, however, didn't see this as damning proof and instead questioned the validity of the call, saying, you have to go off what is the actual proof. There was no witness that was presented as a victim or anyone like that to testify this was her. However, DNA testing showed that McCommon was indeed pregnant with a child of one of her victims. It's believed that McCommon may have victimized as many as 21 students between the ages of 12 years old to 17 years old. And in March, she was indicted on nearly 24 charges, which included rape of a child, 5 counts of aggravated statutory rape, 4 counts of sexual exploitation by electronic means, 4 counts of solicitation of a minor to commit aggravated statutory rape, 2 counts of statutory rape by an authority figure, 2 counts of coercion of a witness, 2 counts of aggravated stalking, violation of the Child Protective Act, tampering with evidence, harassment. The 23 charges are related to 5 victims, and 13 of the charges are concerning one victim alone. Initially, McCommon's trial was supposed to be split in 2. She was going to be tried for just the case focusing on the student she had a child with, and the other trial was going to be focusing on the multiple victims. But that won't happen now, because on December 20th, McCommon decided to enter a guilty plea to charges of rape of a child, statutory rape by an authority figure, aggravated statutory rape, sexual exploitation of a minor by electronic means, and solicitation of a minor, aggravated statutory rape.
Understands the consequences of entering these pleas, has entered into them freely, voluntarily, and intelligently, and that there are sufficient facts to support the pleas. The court therefore accepts your plea of guilty and so finds you guilty.
In taking this deal, prosecutors agreed to drop the other charges against her. McCommon was sentenced to 25 years in prison for her crimes with no possibility of parole, and she is also required to register as a sex offender and have her teacher's license revoked. District Attorney Mark Davidson praised the investigative efforts of law enforcement and prosecutors following the conviction, saying, quote, "These convictions and sentence demonstrate the continuing commitment of law enforcement and the district attorney's office to aggressively investigate and prosecute child rape and sexual abuse cases." McCommon was also ordered not to have any contact with the victims, and this includes the infant child now being raised by the family of her 12-year-old victim. As for the victims and their families, the sentence brings some measure of justice. In a statement during McCommon's sentencing, the mother of one of the victims said, quote, "You used our friendship to hurt me and the people I love in this world, took innocence from my son before puberty, took what was supposed to be a great experience and tainted it. There's no amount of time they can give you that will equal what God will give you. You will burn in hell." Let's break this down with criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Safa Robinson-Ferrer. Safa, it's always great to see you. You know, those were some pretty harsh words, but given the circumstances, you can't really help but empathize. But what do you make of this case overall, especially as police say there could be as many as 21 student victims who are ranging from the ages of 12 years old to 17 years old over the years?
Absolutely. Those were harsh words, but they were certainly well-deserved. You know, this case is a tragedy. This case is a case where the justice system has failed to protect victims. The educational system has also failed in protecting their students as well. You know, a lot of times these cases, they don't come out of nowhere. There are usually signs and things that occur before they get too far. So I believe there were a number of victims, or there were a number of alleged victims in this case, ranging from the ages of 12 to 17. I think the disclosure happened with a former student, so not a current student of the defendant in this case. We know that the first disclosure came from a former student, so that tells me that this has been a pattern of behavior that has gone on for quite a bit of time with this particular teacher. And it's only come to light, however, or it seems to have come to light now that this 12-year-old has fathered a child from her. So there are usually, with sexual abuse and things of that nature, there are usually signs, and a lot of times, and it's very unfortunate, that people dismiss because of the relationship with the defendant. But we have to be mindful and be aware that there are signs that take place, specifically in the educational system. Teachers are mandated reporters. If there are conversations or communications, or if a teacher is paying a bit more attention to one student than the others, we have to always ask why. And we always have to be aware of where these things are coming from and, all those sorts of things.
You mentioned something in your answer about a pattern, and we cover a lot of these types of cases here at Law and Crime, and one pattern that always stands out is this treasure trove of digital evidence. Many defendants don't think they'll be caught because they use social media apps like Snapchat, which deletes messages after 24 hours. But what are your thoughts on these teachers who use social media, which helps them continue to commit these types of abuses and these types of crimes?
These social media apps are always going to be an individual's downfall. People think that when they use social media or they use FaceTime as opposed to a regular telephone call, that those things don't store evidence, but in fact they do. Whether it's Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, those records that are created, those pieces of digital evidence that you have created will not go away. They are stored. All it's going to take is the district attorney's office or whatever prosecuting agency to issue a subpoena to Facebook for those records, or Instagram or Snapchat, and those records are kept and preserved in accordance with law by those agencies. So even though your Snapchat is gone in 24 hours, I will guarantee you and promise you that that video still exists and is being held for law enforcement pending any future litigation if it ever were to come up.
And McCommon's attorney initially claimed her to be innocent, calling it a witch hunt. But you're a criminal defense attorney. What do you think of the about face they kind of did, from denial and innocence to just pleading guilty to these charges?
Sometimes as defense attorneys, we have to be aware of the image and the things that we're saying on our cases in the outset of these cases. Sometimes nothing needs to be said. Less is best. If there is a significant question in your mind as the defense attorney as to whether or not your client is innocent or guilty, and there's a question there, then you may want to err on the side of caution and keep silent about the case. We don't have a statement to make at this time, because then what happens is it can damage your integrity as an individual who is representing defendants. It can damage the integrity of your case and other sorts of things. So you have to be mindful and aware of what you're putting out there, even as a defense attorney. In this case, I think that he or she, whoever the attorney was, would have been best to say nothing at all or no comment. And then in the event that she were to take a plea, which she did in this case, then you can make a statement.
It's kind of proving that silence is a lot better in this type of circumstance. And McCommon, while she was out on her bond, violated her bond by talking to one of the victims, seemingly threatening them. So not only is someone in their late 30s sexually abusing a young boy, but then goes as far as to try to silence them. What's your reaction, especially in terms of how that young boy could be feeling kind of going through all of this?
I cannot imagine being a 12-year-old or the parent of a 12-year-old who is now fathering a child with a predator. And what often happens in cases of sexual abuse is that these individuals who are committing these sorts of acts, more often than not, we find that they have been victimized at some point in their life, but they continue to perpetuate that cycle of behavior when dealing with other people and ultimately come to victimize children and others. What often happens with individuals in these cases is there is sometimes a subtle hint of narcissism, where these individuals, not only do they perpetuate the crimes that they perpetuate, but they also go into sort of a victim blaming type of mentality. And when they do that, not only do they victim blame and say, oh, well, this child or this person came on to me first, this person was looking at me in a certain way, and that's why I acted in the manner that I did. But then they also go to threatening and tampering. And the fact that she threatened, or the allegation is that she threatened this child or one of these individuals, tells me that she had a wherewithal to know what she was doing was wrong. A part of the reason why we have orders of protections in cases like this, when they begin, is to prevent communication between the defendant and the victim. In this case, she committed a crime by violating that order of protection, which continues to go to show that she is now trying to clean up a mess that she made based off of that conduct.
And overall, this case is pretty disturbing. And the most disturbing tidbit of this whole thing is that this woman, Alissa McCommon, gave birth to one of her victim's children. Have you seen something like this ever happen before?
Unfortunately, I have seen things like this happen before. I've also heard of things happen like this before. And as an individual who's been a former prosecutor and a current defense attorney, I can't wrap my mind around how this happens. And we see these things all the time. We have special victims units and prosecutions. She's not the first sex offender that we've come to know and find, but to keep a child that is, the offspring of a rape that you committed is mind-boggling to me. Out on top of actually committing such a heinous act towards a child. So it's very disturbing. These things do happen. They happen a lot more than you would think, but oftentimes they're not talked about until they end up in the media like this.
And Alissa McCommon was sentenced to more than 2 decades in prison. What do you make of that sentence? And do you think it sends a message to other teacher predators?
I think that is certainly a just sentence, as just as it could be considering the circumstances. This child is going to be scarred for his life. This infant that was born as a result of this rape is going to at some point come to find out that his or her mother raped her father, and they are the product of that. So I don't think that there's enough justice to be able to rectify the mental scars and damage that these things have done. However, 25 years is adequate to sentence this individual to. I think that is fair. I think that is just.
All right, criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Safa Robinson-Ferrer, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Before we sign you off, though, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, thank you for having me, and have a happy new year.
All right, Safa, again, thank you so much for your time, and I hope you have a great New Year's as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Sidebar. Be sure to subscribe to us anywhere you listen to your podcasts, whether it's YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. I'm Elizabeth Millner in for Jesse Weber, and this has been Sidebar presented by Law&Crime.